Hello, Mind Mappers, and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over The Charisma Myth by Olivia Fox. Now, this is a very interesting book because I actually think that this is a very well disguised personal development book. It's going to dive very deep into the psychology of kind of self-transformation and personal development, and it's all hidden behind this skill of charisma. And I think it's a very well designed book and a very well laid out book. And I think a lot of the principles and tactics inside of here will help us become more charismatic. But I also think, and I hope Olivia would agree with me, that it's a very well laid out method of becoming more self-aware, of becoming a little bit more confident in yourself, and all sorts of things that go into personal development in general. And with all that out of the way, that little disclaimer that this book is maybe a lot deeper than it looks like on the surface, I'm going to get into the introduction. First, we'll start with the introduction to Olivia herself. She's lectured at Stanford, Yale, Harvard, and MIT, so you know that she knows her stuff very technically. She has also coached leaders, CEOs inside of the Fortune 500 companies, so you know that she's actually been in the trenches and tested these ideas out, which is something that I really, really admire. Regularly featured inside the New York Times, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal, her writing is top notch. It's a very well written book, and the audiobook is also very good as well. I went through that while researching for this mind map. Now, let's get into the charisma myth. And before we get into kind of the first quote of the book, I figured I would lay out how I use mind maps for those of you who are new. First of all, each one of the points on the mind map is going to be essentially one big point, one big idea that I've pulled out of the book to summarize for you. Now, there's two in this mind map green points, and those are the 2 points that I think are the most important, the ones that you'll definitely want to stay tuned for, because those are the big ideas that I think if you implemented those into your life, you would see massive results right away. Now, with that, let's get into the first quote. She says in the book, "Charisma has been turned into an applied science. What this book does is translate the science into practical, immediately applicable tools with measurable results. You'll learn charisma in a methodical and systematic way with practical exercises immediately useful in the real world. And unlike those of us who learn by trial and error, you won't have to waste any time figuring out what works and what doesn't. You can go straight to the tried and true tools that really do enhance your charisma." And that's really what all books are about, a quick shortcut and a look into how people who have become more charismatic or whatever it might be have actually done it and give you some shortcuts. Continuing on, she said, "This book will guide you through the process. It will give you concrete tools for projecting the 3 crucial aspects of charisma, which are presence, power, and warmth, all 3 of which we'll talk about quite a lot in this mind map. As you use them, you will experience an increased sense of personal magnetism, and if it's already strongly present, you'll gain finer control over that charismatic power. You'll learn how to harness it and how to skillfully wield it. You'll also learn how to choose the right kind of charisma for your personality and your goals in any situation." So this is really a book for anyone on whatever skill level they have as far as charisma goes already, whether you're brand new into even thinking about charisma, or whether you're someone who has actually honed in on this charismatic power and has really kind of leveled up your skill as far as charisma goes. What you'll find here is practical magic, unique knowledge drawn from a variety of sciences, revealing what charisma really is and how it works. You'll get both the insights and the techniques you need to apply this knowledge. The world will become your lab, and every time you meet someone, you'll get an opportunity to experiment. You'll learn how to become more influential, more persuasive, and more inspiring. You'll learn how to exude charisma, the ability to move through a room and have people go, "Wow, who is that?" And that's kind of almost a mythological feeling that we all get when we're moving through a room or we meet a new person. There's something just about that person. Maybe you can't quite put your hand on it, can't quite figure out exactly what it might be, but they're just different than everyone else. And that really is charisma. It's something quite hard to explain, but as you'll see here, there really is a science behind it. Now, who doesn't want to have that response in any number of areas? You can think about how many different areas this might be applicable in. Definitely in your career, your social life, and your relationships. And again, this is getting back to, I don't think charisma is necessarily what you think it is. Now, I said before that it's very difficult to put your finger on what charisma might actually be. And I think that is for a reason, because charisma looks like it's happening a lot on the outside, but really it's happening so much on the inside. And that's where this presence, power, and warmth are all coming from. And inside this book, we're simply going to learn how to control those three things: our presence, our power, and our warmth. All things that are coming from the inside, but manifest themselves in our charisma, in the way that we're presenting ourselves to other people. So focusing on these three characteristics will help you be more charismatic and not just appear more charismatic. Now, that's a very deep sentiment here. It's not about being more charismatic, right? It's not about the tips on the outside. It's not about remembering people's names. It's not about standing up straight and all that sort of stuff. It's really about deeply embodying the presence, power, and warmth that all charismatic people actually end up having. And because you embody that, it happens on the outside as much as it's happening on the inside. I should say that the inside precedes it happening on the outside. Now, a quick introduction to mind mapping as well. To get the most out of these mind maps, you can follow along, and the process of how I mind map, plus all 50 plus of my mind map templates, including this one, are all at the first link in the description down below. Following along with these is going to help you learn a little bit better. It's going to help you remember more, and it's going to help you actually apply these books to your life. So I recommend you check out my mind mapping method as well as this mind map to be able to follow along with the video. Now, the first big idea that I pulled out of the book was born with it. And the quote that goes along with this one is that, consciously or not, charismatic individuals choose specific behaviors that make other people feel a certain way. And again, that's the same thing we talked about before. This person's behavior is making me feel a certain way, even if I can't necessarily pinpoint what that behavior might be. She continues on and says that these behaviors can be learned and perfected by anyone. In fact, in controlled laboratory experiments, researchers were able to raise and lower people's levels of charisma as if they were turning a dial. Contrary to commonly held charisma myths, you don't have to naturally be outgoing. That's something that I used to think quite a lot. I'm just not naturally outgoing. But this book, along with different other exercises that I've done previous to this book, have been very, very helpful with helping me be more charismatic. Continuing on, she says you don't have to be physically attractive and you won't have to change your personality. No matter where you're starting from, you can significantly increase your personal charisma and reap the rewards both in business and in daily life. So again, charisma is not something that you have to be born with, although some people almost certainly are. As she says here, you're really just embodying certain characteristics that make people feel a certain way. And you might have learned that early on in your childhood because you were forced into being charismatic. Maybe it just comes a little bit more naturally to you. Maybe you had some really good role models as far as charisma goes, but it really is all just the same thing. It's really a learned skill, even if it does appear that people may be quote unquote born with it. What are some thoughts that you have when a charismatic person comes to mind? Maybe they're extroverted, right? But here's the thing. She gives a couple of examples in the book, and I think they're just great. Elon Musk is as much an introvert as anyone. If you've listened to interviews or podcasts with him, you know that he is not an outgoing person. But he has a cult-like following, unlike anyone else in his field. And he is extremely charismatic, and people hang off every one of his words. Same with Bill Gates. He's introverted, and yet he has hundreds of thousands of people following him at will at his company, as well as many people online. But maybe they're physically attractive, right? That's kind of the other thing that we might think, oh, that person is just physically attractive. That's why people really like him. But think about Winston Churchill. He was not considered attractive, but he was very charismatic. What so many people wouldn't give to be able to get in a time machine just to talk to this man, Winston Churchill. In fact, he was so charismatic that there's actually whole books just dedicated to how charismatic Winston Churchill was. And again, not a very physically attractive man. Instead, it's actually a series of skills that we can tap into at any time, right? So it's not specific attributes that we might already have or that are inherent to us. However, Unlike people who are born with it, some of us need to learn these skills. And again, we talked about already, people aren't necessarily born with it, but they might be forced into it at a very early age. The way to learn a skill is to simply practice a behavior over and over again. And that's what we've talked about so much already on the channel, is how important repetition is when it comes to learning. The 3 behaviors associated with charisma are the ones that we've already talked about before. This presence, power, and warmth. Everything we're going to be talking about in our next big idea, the big 3. She says in the book that charismatic behavior can be broken down into 3 core elements: presence, power, and warmth. And I'm really starting to repeat that phrase, but that's what the entire book is all about. These elements depend on both our conscious behaviors and on factors that we don't consciously control. People pick up on messages we often don't even realize we're sending through just small changes in our body language, right? So charisma is, to a large extent, what you're doing behavior-wise in the external environment. Continuing on, she says, in order to be charismatic, we need to choose mental states that will make our body language, words, and behaviors flow together and express 3 core elements of charisma. Since presence is the foundation for everything, that's where we'll start. So you can see, again, we're talking about how the mental states that you have and the kind of where you're at in your own head is going to change your body language, your words, your behaviors, your cadence of speech, so many different things. And the internal state that you have, this internal mental state, is actually what dictates whether you're charismatic or not. So what's that saying? Essentially, it's saying that there's no way to trick yourself into being charismatic. There's no stand up straight. There's no specific words that you can use or behaviors that you can do that are going to trick people. And it's probably what you were expecting from the book when it was kind of, first came into your radar, is tricks about how to appear more charismatic. But Olivia points out here that tricks just simply aren't going to work. Human beings are literally wired to pick up on so many different signals that if you're faking, people are going to easily be able to tell. Now think about back when we were in small tribes, when we were first kind of learning a lot of these skills. How important would it be to be able to distinguish who is acting in congruence with their internal mental state and who is acting out of congruence with their internal mental state? It would be one of the most important skills, and because of that, human beings are wired specifically to be able to tell if you're acting different than your internal state is actually trying to convey. So instead, we're going to have to go through what each behavior is, and your goal really should be able to embody that mental state as much as possible. When you're able to be fully present, powerful, and warm, your body language, speech, actually just sends signals to everyone around you. Like so much else in personal development, the journey really begins within before we see any external changes. And again, I think this book might just be the best as far as articulating that journey through the journey of becoming more charismatic. But this could apply to so many different journeys. Mental state always comes before external reward, so to speak. So let's talk more about the big 3. What is presence? The good news is that even a minor increase in your capacity for presence can have a major effect on those around you. Because so few of us are fully present, if you can manage even a few moments of full presence from time to time, you'll make quite an impact. So presence is, in effect, the act of being in the moment. This means being fully focused on the person or people that you're with. It's not checking your phone or worrying about the laundry or what you might have for dinner. Presence is an almost never-ending journey because humans are so easily distracted. And as she says, the norm is to be distracted all the time. So even just a few moments of presence can really make someone feel that they're valuable to you. But it's worth taking that journey towards more presence, not only because it's going to make you more charismatic, but because a certain level of presence brought to your daily life might just be the most important and impactful thing that you ever do for yourself. Next, we'll talk about power, and this one could be definitely a misconception for most people. But being seen as powerful means being perceived as able to affect the world around us, whether through influence on authority over others, large amounts of money, expertise, intelligence, sheer physical strength, or high social status. We look for cues and power in someone else's appearance, in others' reaction to this person, and most of all, in the person's body language, right? So body language is more important than what car you drive, where you live, the clothes that you're wearing, the watch that you have, all of that sort of stuff. Body language is easily the most important part of power. Power means being able to affect change. Now, if you already have money, expertise, or status, this one might just end up being easier for you in general. But what if you don't? Well, how about just being the type of person who does what they say they will do? That's a type of power that even most people who have a lot of money might not possess. One that will very likely lead to other types of power. Just having that internal confidence that I'm going to be impeccable with my word is going to affect your body language, and it's going to affect the way that other people are perceiving you on a day-to-day basis. Now, our final one is about warmth. Now, again, this is one that could easily be misconstrued, but what she says is warmth, simply put, is goodwill towards others. Warmth tells us whether or not people will want to use whatever power they might have in our favor. Being seen as warm means being perceived as any of the following: benevolent, altruistic, caring, or willing to impact our world in a positive way. Warmth is assessed almost entirely through body language and behavior. It's evaluated more directly than power. Warmth is being gracious and having goodwill towards others. And the more powerful you are, the more important this is. This again is conveyed mostly through our speech and our body language, but it starts out all in our mind. Once you have the power, how are you going to use it? Do you plan to do good with it, or do you plan to use it for self-gain? Again, humans are surprisingly good at sniffing people out who are selfish. Think about all the times that you've got just a weird feeling from someone. Likely that's just because they weren't being warm. They might not necessarily have had any power over you, so it wasn't obvious, this kind of power dynamic. But even just someone that you work with or an acquaintance that you have that you just got a weird feeling about. Quite often it's because they're externally giving you cues that they're not going to be warm. They're not going to be altruistic. They're not in it for the greater good. They're mostly in it for themselves. And human beings are very, very good at having the radar to be able to see that sort of person. Now, our next big point is about what's stopping you. The quote from the book says, "You've already acquired important insights about the way physical and mental discomfort can handicap your personal charisma potential." In this chapter, you'll gain the tools to put these insights into practice, surmount the obstacles, and successfully handle almost any internal discomfort. No matter what difficult feelings arise, self-doubt, impatience, annoyance, irritation, you'll be able to confidently handle them. Skillfully handling any difficult experience is a 3-step process. Number 1, destigmatize discomfort. Number 2, neutralize negativity. And number 3, rewrite reality. Let's get started. Okay, so I feel like I should backtrack a little bit for those of you who haven't read the book yet, but when she says you've already acquired important insights about the way that physical and mental discomfort can handicap your personal charisma potential, she's talking about how discomfort either in the chair that you're sitting in, or in the suit that you're wearing, or you're feeling anxiety about a certain thing, any of these things are actually going to completely short out the circuitry that comes with charisma. You're going to be focusing so much on that discomfort that you're not going to be charismatic because you're not present. It's very difficult to be warm when you are feeling some sort of mental or physical discomfort. And it's also very hard to have powerful body language when you're feeling uncomfortable. So if you want to increase charisma, first, in my opinion, you really have to clear the way in your own mind. So let's talk about what's actually going to be getting in the way. Well, primarily, for most of the time, it's going to be internal discomfort, which could be anything. It could be maybe you're too hot, too cold, hungry, or tired. I would categorize that as external discomfort. But also maybe you're just angry, sad, bored, anxious, any of these things. That's going to be internal discomfort. And all of these are actually going to be portrayed through your body language and can easily be misinterpreted as something else by the person or persons that you're communicating with. And very much, again, it's just going to short circuit those three most important things. That presence, it's going to take you out of the moment. It's going to shortcut your body language because you're going to be fidgeting and etc. And number three, it's very hard to be warm when you're uncomfortable. So how are we going to overcome this internal discomfort, right? So for me, internal discomfort is the one that we're going to have to overcome. You're going to want to be aware of external discomfort. If you're too hot, too hard, or too cold, or hungry or tired, any of those things, you're going to want to be aware of that and try not to let that kind of seep into your conversations. But to overcome this internal discomfort, this is something that I think is worthwhile. Number one is you have to destigmatize discomfort. If you're angry, sad, bored, anxious, any of these things, feeling uncomfortable that way is normal. And really, it's just part of the human experience. We're constantly kind of changing emotions and behaviors and just states in general. We're constantly changing. Shaming or blaming yourself for the feeling is going to make it even worse. It's not helpful at all. Don't blame yourself for feeling angry, sad, or bored. Instead, just know, okay, I'm feeling a little angry, sad, or bored. I'm going to try not to let that affect me in this interaction that I'm having with this other person. Number two is you want to neutralize negativity. There are many techniques inside the book, such as calling out the thought patterns or thinking of them as just graffiti on your mind. The one that I'm fond of, and I think I picked this up from a mentor quite a long time ago, but I'm fond of calling these things neurological junk. If I'm feeling sad, angry, bored, anxious, any of these things in the moment, I think that they're just kind of neurological junk. It's not important to me right now because I can't do anything about feeling that specific feeling in the moment, right? Maybe long term I would be able to address it a little bit better if I'm tired or angry, but I'm not going to be able to actually go through with any of this sort of thing while I'm in the moment in a conversation. Maybe I'm on a coaching call, maybe I'm doing a video. I'm not going to be able to even worry about these things. So all of that stuff right now is neurological junk. My caveman brain, it would be wonderful at protecting me. Maybe it's telling me I'm tired, I need to kind of lay down, or maybe it's telling me I'm angry, sad, or bored, any of these things. If it's telling me that, it's likely because it's trying to protect me. So I'm grateful that these thoughts are popping up, but I just have to say that it's junk right now because I don't have the ability to look at it. Step number three is rewiring reality. See, brains can't really distinguish between what we imagine and what reality is. And this gives us the power to quote unquote rewrite reality. I love the way that she framed this. The best way to rewrite reality is simply just to ask questions, right? If I'm feeling anxious, what else could this situation mean? What might this anxiety be trying to tell me? If I'm kind of sitting in a waiting room, or if I'm getting turned down for something that's coming up, how could this thing actually end up benefiting me? Where might be the silver lining inside of this situation? Now, these are all really great tools for things so much more than just charisma. It's great tools for bringing you back into the moment. It's a great tool for helping you deal with this mental discomfort that so often comes along with the human experience. I think it's great ways to practice these things, and by practicing these things, not only are you going to make yourself feel better, but of course along the way, you're going to start to become more charismatic. You're able to be more present. You're able to be more powerful or present yourself in a more powerful way, and you'll be able to be more warm because you're not constantly dealing with your internal discomfort or even your external discomfort that you might be feeling. Our next big idea is about visualization. Because of its powerful mental and physiological benefits, visualization is one of the most effective charisma boosting tools available. And this is so great because this is just another great tool for so many things other than charisma. The right visualization can help you increase your internal feelings of confidence as well as your ability to project it. Just by using the right mental images, your subconscious mind will send a remarkable chain reaction of confidence signals cascading through your entire body. In fact, you can display nearly any body language just by picking the right visualization. Now, this one in particular I find very, very good for boosting my confidence, which is making me appear more powerful. And that's great, right? So visualization, again, is indeed a powerful tool. Of all the charisma boosting techniques, this is the one that I recommend making a permanent part of your toolkit. If you gain nothing else from this book, this one technique will make a critical difference in your charisma. Not only just your charisma, but your confidence, your It can help you lower your anxiety levels, everything. It's so great. It's a powerful tool. It's something much more powerful than I think most people realize. But simply by practicing and rehearsing scenarios in your mind, you can dramatically increase your charisma. There are two types of visualization that I end up finding helpful on a day-to-day basis. First is a forward-looking visualization. So this is where you would imagine an event that's coming up in your life. Instead of potentially the normal anxiety, fear, or doubt that you might have, and these sort of things are continually popping up in your mind and causing you that internal discomfort that we talked about, instead of seeing those things, all you're going to do is all the things the charismatic person is going to do, you're going to see yourself doing them, and you're going to see yourself embodying that. You're going to see yourself being confident. You're going to see yourself being present in the moment. You're going to see yourself being powerful and standing up straight and conveying that powerful body language. And you're also going to see yourself being warm, inviting. You're going to see yourself looking out for the greater good of the other person, and continually rehearse that over and over and over again. Not only is it going to help you crush that anxiety, fear, and doubt, but at the same time, you're going to be practicing your charismatic skills, quote unquote, in the moment, even though it's only in your head. The second one is past visualization. So this is great right before an event to reassure yourself that you can do this. Look back on an event in the past where you were successful. Think about how amazing that feeling was and all of the confidence you had. And almost try and get yourself back into that same mental state. So if I just came off a really killer presentation, I'm going into the next one, maybe it's a little bit bigger room, maybe it's in front of a different crowd, and etc. What I'll do is I'll rehearse that last one that I did, whether it was last week or last weekend or whatever it was, and I'll just rehearse it over and over and over in my mind. All the beats that I hit, all the good things that came from that specific event that I went to. It's very, very important to kind of go back and congratulate yourself. I feel like so often I'm going forward that I find it very difficult to go back and visualize what the amazing things that I've done in the past are. And that's very, very helpful when it comes to charisma, because it makes you feel more powerful. Practicing these visualizations will not only help you boost your charisma, but will actually help you perform better in the moment. A quick aside away from this, I actually had read a study about people who were doing weight training. They had 3 different groups. One group was going to do absolutely nothing. The second group was going to lift weights. It was a bicep curl, I think. And the third group was just going to visualize for the same amount of time as the second group of curling the weight. Now, what you would normally think is that the same amount of muscle is going to happen on the people who did nothing and the ones who visualized, right? Obviously, the people who did the curls in physical reality they're going to grow. But what actually ended up happening was the people who visualized not only grew their muscle, but they ended up growing the muscle almost to the same extent that they would have if they simply just actually did the exercise, which is amazing. It's your mind actually causing changes in your body because, again, the mind, the body, it can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. And visualization is just using that, quote unquote, flaw of the mind to our own benefit, instead of what normally happens where we visualize all the bad things that could potentially happen to us and we end up really feeling a lot of anxiety because of it. Now, let's get into this one. This one's the warmth formula. It's our second last point, and warmth is one of the key components of charismatic behavior. It can make people like you, trust you, and want to help you, right? So visualization was helping us quite a lot with the power question. What's stopping you was talking quite a lot about the present moment. And then this last one, the warmth formula, we're going to be talking quite a lot about warmth. Unfortunately, for many people, warmth isn't an obvious, easy feeling to access. It just doesn't come naturally. She says that many of my clients can find in their first session that they feel they just aren't quite sure what warmth should feel like. In fact, I often hear from new clients, but what if deep down I'm actually heartless? What if I can't access my warmth? Well, the good news is that you can absolutely guarantee that you're not heartless, and I know for sure that anyone can learn to better express the warmth. So, what if warmth doesn't come naturally to you? Good news is that it's just like presence and power. Warmth is a skill that can be learned. And really, there's 3 components that she gives in the book. Number 1 is gratitude. So this is the quality of being thankful and readiness to show appreciation. Number 2 is goodwill. This is someone who's friendly, helpful, cooperative, or feelings and attitude of friendly and helpful or cooperative. The state of simply wishing others well. And number 3 is compassion. Concern for the misfortune of others and willingness to go out of your way to help others. All things that I think a lot of us would be more than happy to embody. But how could we practice them? Well, for gratitude, it's very, very easy. You simply try and count your blessings. Maybe you could write down 3 things that you're thankful for, whether it's first thing in the morning or at nighttime. It's a great practice to have of getting into gratitude as often as we can. Number 2 is goodwill. Focusing on others. So think about when you're having a conversation or when you're thinking about someone, what are 3 things that you really like about that person? What are 3 things that you really enjoy about that person? What are 3 times that you felt thankful that you had that person in your life? Great questions to ask. Number 3 is compassion. So start with yourself. Compassion for others doesn't come until you practice it for yourself. We got to stop beating ourselves up as much as we do, and that's a long, long journey. I'm doing a book review on the 4 agreements, and I think that a lot of you would like that book if you find yourself struggling with that self-compassion part of it. Now, the final and what I think most important point is going to be is the power secret, right? Because we can't peer into other people's hearts and minds, we assume attributes and from the values that we observe. When someone displays high confidence through their body language, we tend to assume that they have something to be confident about. People simply accept what you project. Any increase in the amount of confidence your body language projects will bring you major charisma rewards. Projecting power and confidence is what allows you to emanate warmth, enthusiasm, and excitement without coming across as overeager and subservient. So we didn't talk about this too much in the mind map, but it's very important to keep the levels of all 3, warmth, power, and presence, keep them in equilibrium. Because if you get too far out in power, you get too far out in warmth, too far out in present, you end up kind of looking a little weird. You want to try and keep them as much in equilibrium as we possibly can. Because body language is wired so deeply within us, signs of confidence or lack thereof in someone's body language have veto power over all other signs of power. No matter how many signs of power and the high status that we may project through our appearance, title, or even others' deference, a body language of insecurity will kill charisma on the spot. So you don't have to worry if you don't have a lot of these things that would normally convey power. But on the other hand, a body language of confidence can endow its bearer with charisma even when no other power signs are present. So what she's saying here is that power can seem like it's all about titles, dress, and rank. But while it is about those things in some way, shape, or form, those things are not everything. Because to an even larger extent, it's about the body language. Because human beings have no ability to read minds, like we talked about before. Instead, we look and read body language, and we're really, really good at it. That means that no matter what your title, your dress, your rank, you need eminent control over your body language. Confident body language, Some of the things that we learned today are going to help us with this. Visualization with confident body language and understanding the importance of body language are all going to help you with your charismatic journey. Now, to put this into practice, what should we do? Olivia just tells us to keep practicing taking up more space. Stand upright with your shoulders back, and don't be afraid to be in the front of the line. And to me, this is a chicken or the egg scenario, where if you're more confident, you're going to stand more upright, you're going to be ready to be in front of the line, you're going to be taking up more space. But if you do those things, it also kind of repeats in your mind that you are powerful. And this is the one that I think a little bit of external reality can come internal rather than the opposite, what we've been talking about so much today. I recommend that you try this for a few days and see how you feel. It's just about the repetition, and it might feel a little weird at first. Thanks so much for being with me here today. I hope to see you in the next mind map. Now again, you can go down to the bottom in the description. You can get all of my mind maps and my exact step-by-step guide on how to mind map completely for free. You can also sign up for coaching down at the link below. I've been having so much fun talking to a lot of the YouTube channel viewers on all sorts of different personal development topics, and it's been very, very rewarding for both parties. Thanks so much, and again, I hope to see you in the next mind map.